welcome to Bonus Action Heroes Read RPG Reddit Stories. You can also listen to this in podcast format. Just search for Bonus Action Heroes wherever you get your podcasts. This week, the discussion focuses on the importance of collaborative storytelling. Turning an important NPC into a PC without asking me. From RD&D user 368291, so I'm thinking a throwaway account. We've been playing this campaign for nearly a year now. About 6 months ago, my character met an essential NPC. I dedicated a lot of time and resources to getting to know him, spending numerous sessions with him and investing heavily in our relationship. My character even chose to romance this NPC. In our group, such romances between PCs and NPCs are common and have never been an issue for any of us. During a battle, this NPC sacrificed himself for my character. Since then, my character has been on a quest to bring him back to life. For the past 6 months, every downtime session has been focused on this goal. My group and I undertook specific missions to gather the necessary resources and information for the resurrection. I genuinely invested a lot of effort and I was deeply committed to this storyline. However, the recent session completely undermined all of that. A friend of ours wanted to join our group. This friend had briefly played the NPC for one session 6 months ago. The friend and my DM decided he should permanently take over the NPC, turning him into a PC. My DM disregarded all the plans and information my character had gathered and conveniently brought the NPC back to life without any effort on my part or from our group. All the hard work and dedication I put into reviving the NPC seemed to be for nothing. I had worked so hard and now the NPC just returns out of nowhere, and all of this happened without even asking me first. However, that's not my primary concern. I might sound unreasonable, but I disliked the idea of another player controlling this NPC. It somehow diminishes the excitement and tension I found in our interactions. Moreover, this NPC is no longer the character I knew since he's being played differently now. I had much more fun when the DM controlled him, but I find it challenging to convey this sentiment to my group. In our dynamics, role-playing between players feels different from interactions with the game world and the NPCs. This change has taken away the tension for me, and I never considered a romantic angle between two PCs. I voiced my concerns to the group, but my DM doesn't see an issue. He even stated that the NPC was never my NPC to begin with. Reddit, am I being unreasonable for feeling this way? Do you also see a distinction between NPCs and PCs, or is my DM correct in believing that fundamentally nothing changes? I have strong feelings on this.
I have strong feelings as well. I don't think that player is being unreasonable. I think that's really short-sighted of the GM, because ultimately that player may be comfortable role-playing romance with an NPC with that GM. They haven't even discussed whether is it a she?
It doesn't say.
Haven't even discussed whether they are comfortable role-playing romance with this new player. Where's the consent? Where's the discussion around whether they are comfortable with it? That's forced two players to potentially role play a romance, or for that player to just give up on that storyline and abandon it. Not even to mention derailing lots of character development, lots of effort, lots of core character angst that's being explored there. James just kind of hand waved it, and
whatever they're exploring through that relationship with the NPC, the dynamic completely changes. They no longer have any control over that relationship. They've just taken it away from them, and that is unacceptable to me. One of the comments says, even putting aside the romance angle, the situation for the OP's PC, along with the rest of the party, is that someone they knew was killed, and now they've come back with a different personality. Would the party be most likely, fine, come adventure with us, or who the are you, and what did you do with the real person?
Yeah, we brought the wrong soul back in this body, which could be a cool storyline.
In the comments, there are a lot of people saying that could be a cool way to do it. It's a different person that's come back. It's what happened to them, but all the same, yeah, what you just said, they've essentially said all of that in-game time and investment means nothing now. I have an example.
Okay, go. Yeah.
That works in reverse.
Yeah.
I had the beginnings of an in-character romance with another player that we discussed, and it was all
Yes.
consensual, and it was
Discussed it
actually became a
with the
really
player. You agreed it with the player. You knew what the bounds of that romance was and how you would play it. You were both comfortable with it. I do remember. Yes.
and it was a really interesting way to yeah, discover our characters because they were quite isolated and were discovering so cheesy, like discovering that they could actually trust other people and things like that. It was a really interesting angle for that. That player left for their reasons, and that player's character then had to become an NPC. They couldn't just fade into the background because we had a history now. So they went off on their own quest. Fine. Luckily, I hadn't got too invested in that relationship, so it just essentially became like having to role play having an ex,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
And
is fine.
almost the one that got away.
But honestly, when that player came back a couple of times with the DM just role playing them, because they weren't the player, because it was just a sort of guest appearance, hello, I was like,
And
emotionally,
I don't.
reactively, I
Yeah.
remember being like, this is not that character. This is not how I would interact with that character because they would never say that to me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this hurts. You're making that character uh, someone
Yeah.
else and rewriting what was some very meaningful role play for me. And I know,
Yeah.
honestly, that like I understand they were just in terms of the worlds, they still existed and had to be there. But in terms of my reaction to them, I got that experience of, oh, that character's been taken away from me, that role play's been taken away from me. So I can't begin to uh, comprehend how this person must feel who put in 6 months of work on this
Yeah.
relationship in game.
Exactly. And I think it's really important as GMs that we consider that. The GM's like, that NPC isn't yours. Well, actually, storyline wise, that NPC, yeah, isn't that character's, but it is more that character's than anyone else's. They have a romantic interest. They have gone to great lengths to bring them back. That NPC is part of that character's personal storyline and plot. And the GM effectively has kind of cut the cord and switched it mid storyline. That's really poor judgment, I think. Just not thought it through.
Okay, so there's a comment here. Wow, I feel for the friend who just stepped in, who I would guess does not know any of this, talk about walking into a frickin' minefield.
Yeah.
Maybe that player has no idea about
They
any of this.
probably don't. They probably just go, oh, well, you played him once. And I think that's where the GM's coming from. They played him once and the GMs thought, oh, well, he'll just slot in. It'll be really slick and easy. We don't have to do any introductions. We don't have to do any meeting, and we don't have to do the meet cute. Basically it's already all happened, but has not thought about the impact on the player. And I think, yeah, that player's probably feeling in the middle of stuff now. And they probably would have appreciated talking to the player, because if that player would have said, look, it's a really important NPC to me. It's like, it's literally that character's personal storyline. And if you played it, it would feel different. And I don't know if I would enjoy it. So that they might have said, oh, I'll play something else. I would do that if someone said that to me.
The problem. Is it me, the GM, the campaign, or the system? This is from our RPG and the user Joachim Hellblazer. So, since I was around 12 to 13 years old, I've always wanted to play a World of Darkness RPG because I love horror and I think the lore is amazing. Unfortunately, my parents were very religious and wouldn't let me buy the books. I finally found a Vampire the Masquerade game to join and was super excited. But 3 sessions in, and I'm disappointed with some things. It hasn't been what I expected, but I'm not sure whose fault it is. The truth is, I'm used to D&D 5e and always considered myself more of an actor than a mathematician, so a system with fewer numbers seemed ideal. But now I'm missing the numbers and finding myself in a situation where D&D has too much math and BTM has too little. I'm missing the combat. I understand it's not the focus, but it would be nice to have a vampire fight once in a while. But it's mostly just people talking to each other and plotting against one another. I thought I would like it because, as a teenager, I loved series like The Vampire Diaries and True Blood, which were basically emo, edgy vampires talking for an hour. Which brings me to the problem with the campaign itself. I didn't know anything about the campaign except that our characters would be newcomers to London. It turns out it's a mystery campaign, which I thought was cool, but only a small part of the sessions is dedicated to actual investigation. Most of the time, the characters don't interact, each one has their own goals unrelated to the mystery, and literally everyone is a jerk. The GM didn't tell me anything, so I created a character as a joke. He's a vampire YouTuber, TikToker focused on charisma and manipulation, and the joke is that his clan is made up of ugly vampires. But the character has zero goals and zero connections in the city. What the hell am I supposed to do? I've also realised that I can't play a bad person. It's just not in my nature. Either that or I have to play someone bad but with comedic elements too. The group itself is nice, but they're all veterans of the game, and some are using characters from previous campaigns. Even the GM keeps making references, bringing in old characters, and using inside jokes that everyone laughs at, whilst I'm just like, lots of question marks? It feels like the time when Game of Thrones was popular, and if you were around a group of fans, you'd be lost in the conversation because you weren't watching the series. Anyway, should I leave? Should I talk to the GM? Whose fault is it? I'm sad again because I love the lore of the game. I even bought the books just to read them.
It doesn't sound like that player had any conversations before the game as to what to expect.
Well, no, it says the GM told me nothing.
Well, that's the first mistake. You'll find. I mean, I'm an old school player, and we never did session zeros, and I think I have completely come around to them. They are kind of crucial, and there is a tendency, if it's an existing game, for GMs to think, "Oh, I don't need to do that. We've already done that. Everyone knows what we are." But if you're bringing a new player in, they need to know what to expect, especially with a system they've never played. But I would also say that there are, just like D&D, there's so many different ways to play it. Me personally, I've played lots of combat orientated games, and I've played lots of role play orientated games of Vampire, and I think both have got their place. I think one of the other problems with 5th edition, and actually it's a thing that I like about it, is that combat is very different and it's designed to be more cinematic. They have this 3 and out rule, I think it's called, which effectively means you do 3 rounds of combat and then the storyteller ascertains who is winning and then narrates, the other faction might retreat, or you basically decide who wins so that it doesn't just keep going on and on and on, which, it's a bit of a flaw in D&D sometimes, that combats just go on forever. The other issue with Vampire is it is a game. It's called Vampire the Masquerade for a reason. Generally, they keep their existence secret. They don't want to be understood. So that, in a way, naturally leads you away from combat because you don't want to be seen using what in effect are superpowers in public, because that raises awareness and you end up with a situation with, well, the original Inquisition in vampire lore was effectively human beings discovering supernaturals like vampires, werewolves, all sorts of things, and culling them effectively. So that was the lore reason that this masquerade was brought into being, and that's the reason why combat has to be very carefully managed.
But in terms of the mechanics, when they say is it the game, they are all essentially roll to hit, roll to see if I can do that games. It's just the skills are slightly different. But I think with the setting, with Vampire being a contemporary setting and D&D generally being a fantasy, more medieval style setting, your dungeon delving, it's in the name. There's going to be traps, there's going to be bandits, there's going to be more things that you are likely to encounter in terms of combat and skill checks. Whereas I think in Vampire, a lot of that involves you creatively thinking about what you want to do. Like if you are potentially, how do you hunt? How do you break into a place if you need to get some information? It's more character driven than D&D, where I feel like that is more here is a quest.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know it always comes down to talk to your GM. That's the first port of call, and it obviously is. But yeah, it says that they're an established group, and the OP is saying, I don't have any connections in the city. It's late, but yeah, the only way they're going to invest in the RP is if they have connections in the city, so they need to have that conversation. Then their attitude to that kind of play will also change because they'll have reasons to buy in. They'll have reasons to protect that coterie and protect their domain.
You could approach the other players and say, how can I get myself more involved? What do I need to do? Is there anything I should know? Can you give me any little tidbits that will let me get into the story? Or can we arrange something that my character knows something that another character wants? Or, there's always ways to generate play. It just takes a bit of effort. Matt Mercer talks about shoe leather, which is a concept in film where you cut to the action. You don't show people walking and doing the mundane stuff, shopping or whatever it might be, unless it's got a real key point in the story. And I think there can be a tendency with Vampire especially to have a lot of shoe leather. It's quite a self-indulgent game, so you do have a lot of character development, a lot of in-character drama. People want to role play that you're an immortal who is trying to cling to their humanity. It's whole part of the game is to try and not give way to this monster that's within you. So I think shoe leather and vampire can naturally go together if you're not careful. But I think I have one more suggestion for this person. If they love the lore and they're missing the combat element, maybe try running a game. Run the game that you would like to play. I think that can often, and it's not ideal if you want to play, but run the game that you want to play, and then you will attract players that also enjoy that, and then potentially they may run one for you. So I think that can be a good in. And it's really worth running. I would encourage that player to have a go and run a game, because the rules are very different. They are very simple, relatively. However many dots you have in something, that's how many dice you roll. A lot of combat situations are contested, so you roll against each other. So you instantly know who's won and who hasn't in a melee. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot simpler. The difference in the number of successes is the amount of damage. I mean, we didn't do a lot of combat, so we were a bit clunky with it, but it is still quicker. It does still flow quite quickly. You get through things quite quickly. And of course, you get to round 3 and you already know who's won. I mean, the initial game, we started with a heist just to ease you in as D&D players, right? But then once you kind of figured out the heist, it just became freeform sandbox, but not in a restrictive, not in a sort of lazy way. It was just more the story went wherever you went and you resolved it however you resolved it. So if you resolved it with combat, that was fine. If you resolved it through talking, equally fine. If you resolved it through using corrupt police officers to steal evidence and so that you could ensure that you got away with something, fine. And I think in that way, it's a lot more interesting. It's a really good system to learn about sandbox style games and letting the players lead the story.
I also wanted to touch on that I can't play bad. That's going to be difficult in Vampire. I had a comment that I found that said, my only VTM games saw me wanting to participate, but I could not accept being a vampire. I tried to find any version of vampires where I'd be enjoying things, and I couldn't. The lack of control, the innocents being killed, and so on, just not for me. If I became one of those bloodsuckers, I would just stake myself. It's not bad to realise the game you want to play, or thought you did, wasn't what you thought it was.
I think that's good advice. If you're not comfortable playing the evil stuff, 5th edition is quite clear that when you lose control, the storyteller can take over. So it is almost like you're a passenger in your body as the beast takes over. And then you get to role play a good person coming to terms with what's happened.
And I think, yeah, like you said, it is a very dark side of roleplay to explore. It obviously is not for everyone, and I do think there is a little bit of risk with Vampire that it attracts people who like to play evil, which is fine. I generally don't think playing evil in D&D is conducive to what is essentially a cooperative game.
Yeah.
So I haven't played that way in Vampire yet, but I would assume the same, because at the end of the day, they are all cooperative storytelling games. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also join the live chat on Twitch at Bonus Action Heroes. If you want to suggest Reddit stories to cover, please comment below or join our Discord linked in the description.